Once again, good afternoon everybody. I am Teacher Joker from Wachukacher School. I am handling grade 5/1 and today I will be teaching mathematics. Our topic for today is how to compare fractions. Are you ready? Okay, so let's start now our lesson. So to start with our lesson for today, let's have the vocabularies first. So we have mixed number, improper fraction, proper fractions. So as you remember, these are the three types of fractions that we discussed before. So proper fraction has a smaller number than the denominator, while improper fractions have a numerator equal or greater than the denominator, while mixed number, it consists of a whole number and a proper fraction. So what is fraction, by the way? A fraction is a number that represents a whole. Denominator is the number below the line of a fraction, and numerator is just the opposite. It's just the number above the line. So these are the vocabularies for today. Now let's have comparing fractions with the same denominators. So if the fraction have the same denominators, that would be easier to compare. So by using the symbol of greater than and lesser than, we are going to compare which one is greater and which one is lesser. So we have an example over here: 2 over 4, 3 over 4, 1 over 4. So we're going to compare first the two fractions, 2 over 4 and 3 over 4. Which one do you think is greater or bigger? Okay, the rule in here is if they have the same denominator, the numerator will be your basis. So since 3 is greater than 2, then 3 over 4 is greater than 2 over 4. Therefore, if we're going to compare the two fractions, 2 over 4 and 3 over 4, 2 over 4 is lesser than 3 over 4. Okay? Next, if we're going to compare 3 over 4 and 1/4, or 3/4 and 1/4, which one is greater and which one is lesser? Again, look at the numerators. 1 is lesser than 3, or 3 is greater than 1. Therefore, 3/4 is greater than 1/4. Why? Because the basis in here is the bigger numerator has the greater value if they have the same denominator. Okay? So I'm going to show you a short video clip to support this topic. So please watch the following video. In addition to our lesson a while ago, which is comparing fractions with the same denominator, the size of the numerator indicates the size of the fraction. So again, we have here an example, 1/2 over 3/2. So since they have the same denominator, which is 2, our basis here is the numerator. So the numerator of 1/2 is 1, and the numerator of 3/2 is 3. Okay, 1 is lesser than 3, right? Therefore, 1/2 or 1 over 2 is lesser than 3 over 2 because 1 is lesser than 3. Okay, so to learn more about comparing fractions with the same denominator, we're going to watch a short video clip in the next slide. So let's watch and learn.
Comparing and ordering fractions for beginners. We can compare fractions and put them in order using fraction strips. Here's 3/4 and 1/4. And here's an illustration of those fractions using fraction strips. You can see straight away that 3/4 is the greatest fraction. Next, we write about that using the greater than or less than signs. We're going to show the fractions from least to greatest, and that's smallest first. Now the fractions are in the right order, but which sign do we use between them? Not sure which sign to use? Don't worry. Here's the easiest way to put in the right sign. We can think of these signs as having 3 dots, 2 here and 1 here. 2 dots always go beside the greater number in the pair and 1 dot beside the smaller number. 2 is greater than 1, and here 1 is less than 2. We understand the sign from left to right, like reading a word on a page. Going back to our fraction pair, I put the 2 dots beside the greatest fraction and 1 dot beside the smallest fraction. Now, join the dots. 1/4 is less than 3/4. We used the less than sign without any confusion with this easy thinking. When fractions have the same denominator, we just line them up in size order using the numerators. Easy. We don't even need to use fraction strips. We'll have one last example, then it's your turn. We're going to put this group of 4 fractions in order from greatest to least. We start big and go small. This time, I'm not going to use fraction strips. The denominators are all the same, so the numerator tells us the greatest fraction. And 7/8 is the greatest fraction because it has the largest numerator. The next one down from this is 5/8, then 3/8, and the smallest is 2/8. Now they are arranged in descending order. We have to use the sign that shows that relationship. Between the first 2 fractions, put 2 dots for the bigger fraction and 1 dot for the smaller fraction. Join the dots, and there's our sign. Greater than. 7/8 is greater than 5/8. And again, between 5/8 and 3/8, 2 dots by the greater fraction, 1 by the smaller fraction. 5/8 is greater than 3/8. And the last one, put in the dots, and there's our sign. So we have written 7/8 is greater than 5/8, which is greater than 3/8, which is greater than 2/8. You can do this too. It just takes a bit of practice. Speaking of which, it's practice time now. And next time, we'll see how fraction strips can be very useful when you're comparing fractions with different denominators.
So what if you're going to compare a proper fraction with a mixed number? Okay, so we have there 2 fractions, 5/8 and 1 and 3/8. So which is greater between the 2 fractions? Your basis there is the mixed number. Mixed number is greater than 5/8. Why? Because 1 is greater than 5/8. Therefore, if we're going to compare, 5/8 is lesser than 1 and 3/8. Okay, because take a look of the diagram below. That explains that 5/8 is lesser than 1 and 3/8. And what if you're going to compare improper fraction with a mixed number? To explain this problem, let's watch a video.
I've got pairs of mixed numbers and improper fractions, and I want to think about which of the two is larger. So 1 and 7/8, 39/10. So you could do this in your head. You could say 10 goes into 39. I'll even write out 10 goes into 39 3 times. 3 times 10, and you want to find the largest number of times 10 goes into this without going over. So if you couldn't write a 4 over here, because then that would be 40. That would go over 39. 3 times 10 is 30, and then you have a remainder of 9. So you could rewrite this expression right over here. Instead of 39/10, you could write it as 30/10 plus 9/10. And 30/10 is just 3. So this is equal to 3 and 9/10. And you could do that in your head. You could say 10 goes into 39 3 times, and the remainder is 9. You have your 9/10. And that's essentially just doing this in your head. So now we can compare, and we can literally just look at the whole number parts. This is 1 and something, 1 and 7/8, and we're comparing it to essentially 3 and 9/10. 3 and 9/10 is clearly a larger number. We have a 3 out here instead of a 1. So we will write less than. And the way I always remember it is the opening always faces the larger number, and the opening is large, it faces the larger number, and the point is small, it always points to the smaller number. Now let's do this next one. 4 and 7/8 versus 49 over 9. So let's convert this to a mixed number. 9 goes into 49 5 times, and 5 times 9 is 45, so the remainder is going to be 4. The remainder is 4. So this is 5 and 4/9. Once again, we can literally just look at the whole number parts. 5 is clearly larger than 4. So once again, less than. Point facing the smaller number, opening facing the larger number. Now, 2.5 versus 11/10. 10 goes into 11 only one time. And if you care about the remainder, it's 1. So it's 1 and 1/10. Which is clearly smaller than 2 and 1/2. You just look at the whole number of parts. 2 is clearly larger than 1. So we want our opening of our less than or greater than sign to face the larger number. So we would write it like this. And this is greater than. So 2.5 is greater than 11/10. The little point facing the smaller number. 5 and 4/9 versus 47ths. 7 goes into 40. So let me rewrite this. 7 goes into 40 5 times. And then you're going to have a remainder of 5. Because 7 times 5 is 35. You have a remainder of 5 to get to 40. So it's 5 and 5/7. And if that looks like I'm doing some type of voodoo, just remember, I'm really just breaking it up. I'm just really saying that 40 over 7 is the same thing as 35 plus 5 over 7. The largest multiple of 7 that is less than this number. And this is the same thing as 35 over 7 plus 5/7. And then this 35 over 7 is 5, and 5/7 is just 5/7 there. This one is interesting because we have the same whole number out front on our mixed numbers, 5 versus 5. So now we actually do have to pay attention to the fractional part of our mixed number. We essentially have to compare 4/9 to 5/7. And there's a couple of ways to do this. You could get them to have the same denominator. That's probably the easiest way to do it. So you could rewrite, so what's the least common multiple of 9 and 7? They share no factors, so really the least common multiple is going to be their product. So if we want to rewrite 4/9, we would write 63 in the denominator. That's 9 times 7. If we multiply the denominator by 7, we also have to multiply the numerator by 7. So that will be 28. Now, 5/7, we're going to make the denominator 63. We're multiplying the denominator times 9. Then we have to multiply the numerator times 9 as well. 5 times 9 is 45. So here it's easy to see. 45 over 63 is clearly larger than 28 over 63. And so we could write this, and because the whole number of parts are the same, and 5/7 is the same thing as 45 63rds, and 4/9 is the same thing as 28 63rds, we can write it that 5 and 4/9 is less than 40 over 7. Another way that you could have thought about 4/9 versus 5/7 is you could have said, well, how does 4/9 compare to 4/7? We have the same numerator. The denominator here is larger than the denominator here. But when you have a number in the denominator, the larger it is, the smaller the fraction, the smaller the absolute value of the fraction. So this right over here is a smaller quantity than 4/7. And 4/7 is clearly a smaller quantity than 5/7. So 4/9 is clearly smaller than 5/7. So we would have gotten the same result.
Okay, now, but what if you're going to compare both mixed number? When comparing mixed numbers, the greater the whole number, the greater the mixed fraction. If the whole numbers are the same, compare the fraction. So your basis, if you're going to compare two mixed numbers, is the whole number. Okay, so let's have an example in the next slide. So here's an example of two mixed numbers. So if you're going to compare these two mixed numbers, 5 and 11 over 15 and 3 and 5 over 16, first that we need to observe is the whole number. Okay, we're going to compare if which one is lesser and which one is greater. So since we have different whole numbers here, 5 and 3, wherein 5 is greater than 3, then therefore 5 and 11 over 15 and is greater than 3 and 5 over 16. Okay, I repeat, 5 and 11 over 15 is greater than 3 and 5 over 16 because the whole number of the first fraction is 5, which is greater than 3. Okay? Another example is 2 and 1 over 6 and 4 over 4 and 2 over 3. Okay, so which one is lesser and which one is greater? First, look at the whole numbers. 2 is lesser than 3. Therefore, 2 and 1 over 6 is lesser than 4 and 2 over 3 because 2 is lesser than 4.
Today we're going to cover how to compare mixed numbers. First, let's review quickly what a mixed number is. A mixed number is a math expression that shows a whole number plus a proper fraction. Look at this number here, 5 and 1/2. 5 is our whole number and 1/2 is our proper fraction. Now what happens when you get a problem where you're asked to evaluate two mixed numbers and decide which one is greater? Let's take the first example. 5 and 3/8 compared to 4 and 3/4. You may look at it right off the bat and think, oh man, that's a lot of numbers. I got to look at where do I start? Well, first place you start is with the whole number. 5 is bigger than 4, so who cares what the proper fraction is? 5 is always greater than 4. But what happens when you have two mixed numbers with the same whole number? Okay, then you have to do a little bit more work to compare the proper fractions. Let's look at this example. 4 and 3/8 compared to 4 and 5/16. We're going to look at this by using a concept called cross multiplication. We know that the whole numbers are the same here. They're both 4, so we don't care about that piece of the expression. What we want to focus on is the 3/8 and the 5/16. Let's isolate those two proper fractions to make it easier to evaluate. You may have remembered we've already talked about cross multiplication in a previous video, but if you haven't checked it out, I'll put a link in the description. Basically, cross multiplication says you take the numerator from one fraction and multiply it by the denominator of the opposite fraction, and vice versa. This is a faster way to figure out which fraction is larger instead of going through all the extra steps to convert it to an equivalent fraction. It will give you the same answer as converting to an equivalent fraction, but instead of having to find multiples, do division and multiplication, you just simply multiply. So let's take the 3 in our numerator and multiply it by the 16 in our denominator, and we get 48. We then take the 8 in our denominator and multiply it by the 5 in our numerator, and we get 40. 48 is greater than 40, so the mixed number of 4 and 3/8 is greater than 4 and 5/16. Just for giggles, let's convert 3/8 and 5/16 to equivalent fractions to prove this answer works. 8 goes into 16 twice, so we can convert 3/8 to some number over 16 and evaluate it that way. We said 8 goes into 16 2 times, so to make it equivalent, what you do to the bottom, you must also do to the top. So 2 times 3 equals 6. Our proper fraction of 3/8 is equivalent or equal to 6 over 16. 6 over 16 is greater than 5 over 16. Pretty slick, huh? Let's do one more example. 3 and 5/8 compared to 3 and 4/7. Both numbers are 3, so we don't care about them. Let's look at the 5/8 compared to the 4/7. First, we multiply the 5 times 7 and we get 35. We write that here by our numerator in our first fraction. Then we multiply 8 times 4 and we get 32. That is over here by this numerator. 35 is greater than 32, so 3 and 5/8 is greater than 3 and 4/7. Always remember, when doing cross multiplication, that your product of the numerator and denominator goes with the fraction of the numerator being multiplied. So that's it, a super easy way to compare mixed numbers. If you want some more examples in this topic, head on over to improvedmath.com/additional resources and find yourself a worksheet and answers. If you found this info helpful, you know what to do. Thanks for watching.